No. While he has improved results for United, he doesn't seem to be keeping people happy, and we're still losing in the Champions League. Surely it doesn't take more than 2 years to get everyone where they need to be. Ale, what's happened to Mourinho?
Well, I'm the wrong person to ask, because all along I've been saying that Manchester United are very difficult to watch, but they do get results to some degree. When you lose to Sevilla in Champions League, then people are going to question, are you really getting results? And the problem is when you consider Premier League and what's ahead for Manchester United, what's ahead is that they're going to be chasing down Manchester City. And good luck trying to catch that team, because they're only getting better, they're only getting more comfortable with each other, and in my view, they're right now, as we speak right now, favorites to win it again next season.
If Mourinho continues to let Manchester United play the way they play, is there any way they would ever catch Manchester City?
Well, statistically, Premier League's a very hard league to repeat for whatever reason. I mean, we've seen now the last couple of years, the previous winner doesn't even qualify for Champions League. So if that, I guess, trend continues, then you'd say that maybe Man U has a chance. But you know, I agree with all that. I think Man City just looks like they could be that team that could just run away with the league a couple years in a row. Now, Mourinho is usually his second year wins the title. That didn't happen. It'll be interesting to see where their improvements come from, where they're able to strengthen, and can they challenge next year. But I agree, the loss to Sevilla was the monster, was the one that really set them back. Now, can they win an FA Cup? Does that change the whole year around? The big FA Cup final tomorrow? Good question.
Let's bring Paolo on this. Paolo, beyond the style, what's up with Jose Mourinho? He just seems like a grouch nowadays, going after his players, going after the press, going after everybody. What's up?
I think that what's up with Mourinho is they stopped winning. Look, this guy was always this guy. It's just that when he was winning, it looked different. When you're winning, you're able to carry off that sort of, I don't know, that haughtiness, that little bit of needle, and make it look like it's something fun, like it's something a little bit edgy. But when you're losing, it just looks like sour grapes and a lack of control of the situation. And yeah, I think that's what happened. Mourinho looks different to us all now because he's no longer the guy lifting the trophy at the end of the season.
Yeah, to that point, is that when Mourinho came in and was winning and was saying the things that he was saying in the press conference, it was cute. It was cute. It was entertaining. But now when you're losing, now you're just annoying. You see, because now you lost some of that luster. And at some point, you have to back it up with the results. And meanwhile, while you're trying to entertain in your press conferences and do the things that you do in your press conference, Manchester City's winning. And they keep winning and winning. Good luck catching them.
That's that confidence, arrogance side, right? I mean, when you're portraying yourself as this, you know, if you love him, it's confidence. If you hate him, it's arrogance. But when you're winning, well, all right, he's backing it up.
Yeah.
When you're not, then you're just like, hey, just be quiet.
Next question from #1 Liverpool fan. If Liverpool added...
Stevie Nicol?
Stevie does have a Twitter, but that's not it. Added Buffon for next season, would that make them legitimate cup emoji contenders? I feel like they already are.
How much legitimate can you get if you're in Champions League final?
Okay, but let's make it Premier League. Let's assume that's what #1 Liverpool fan means. Paolo, what do you think? Is that the key for Liverpool to be able to compete with the Manchester City?
No, I don't think a goalkeeper is the gap between Liverpool and Manchester City right now. I think Liverpool are playing extremely compelling attacking football, and they're playing it in a way that's a little bit less balanced than Manchester City do. They're playing it in a way that's a little bit too open, and I don't think any goalkeeper, and certainly not, and I say this with a huge amount of respect and admiration for Buffon, at 41 years old as he'll be next season, he's also not, at this age, performing to the level of, say, a Manuel Neuer or maybe even a Jan Oblak. So he's not even talking about putting the very best keeper in the world today into that puzzle. So no, I don't think that Buffon is the gap between Liverpool and Man City right now.
Our next question comes from Jordy, and I'm so glad Jordy asked this because it's been bothering me for a really long time. Jordy says, let's address the elephant in the room. Ale, are you a Barcelona fan like Dan Thomas is a Madridista?
No. And you know how this has been perpetuated in the show is because Dan Thomas...
He is a Madrid.
Yes, he is for real.
Yeah.
Like, he is a Madridista. He worked for Real Madrid, and then he has to find somebody else to throw under the bus with him. And then he has portrayed me as a
Classic Dan.
Yes. He has portrayed me as a Barcelona fan, which I'm not. What I am is a fan of teams that play well. And for many years now, Barcelona has been one of the dominant teams in Europe. And I like the way that Messi plays. And I appreciate the way that Iniesta plays. And I like Luis Suarez as a center forward. If that makes me a Barcelona fan, then so be it. All I know is that I can appreciate good teams. And Barcelona is a great team.
Casey, speaking of fandom, which of your former clubs do you most root for?
I don't think I'd pick one out over the other. It wasn't
Seattle.
No, it's not. Well, Seattle is my hometown team. I mean, that's the tricky part about stuff. It's not as if, I grew up being a Tottenham Hotspur fan and then got to play for Tottenham Hotspur or Millwall or Rayo or Leicester City. Or I had great times at all the clubs I played for, and I still, it's the first. I'm obviously rooting for Fulham over Aston Villa in the playoff final because it's my former team. I don't have anything against Aston Villa by any means, but look, Sounders were the team when I was a kid before NASL folded. That was my home club team.
Who do you root for harder, Spurs or Seahawks?
Seahawks are my hometown team.
You a big football fan?
Yeah, for sure.
Seahawks going to be any good next year?
A lot of changes. It's going to be tough.
Hey, did you know that Paulo Bandini is a football player?
Did you know linebacker?
Did you know that, Paulo?
I knew he was wearing a helmet on his head earlier. Who's your favorite football team there?
It's been a few years. Yeah, I used to play youth ball over here for the London Blitz. Did you ask what my favorite team is?
Yeah. Do you have a favorite team? A favorite American football team?
Yeah, I do. I was introduced to the game by some friends of our family who live in Arizona. So the first team I watched was the Cardinals, and I've stuck with the Cardinals.
Who's going to play quarterback for the Cardinals?
I was going to say, there's the biggest question coming out right now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Sam Bradford, as long as he's healthy, I guess. Wow. I guess that'll be a week or two, right?
I got to say, by the way, also, before we say goodbye, Paulo Bandini, he cleaned up that hair.
He did.
He cleaned up that hair. He gelled up that hair. I like it. Look at him. Yeah, look at that smile. I love this man.
I'm not saying anything about hair.
Who gave, Ale, you were present for both. Who gave better analysis? American football from Paulo or Liga MX from Shaka?
Oh, no, American football by Paulo. There was a level of investment by Paulo there. That was 100% better than Shaka. I'm pretty sure Shaka did not know we were doing that segment.
To be fair,
yeah,
you picked Toluca and I picked Toluca.
Yeah.
And he did pick Santos, and right now, they're up.
Well, it's not over, is it?
It's not over.
Okay, there you go.
It's not over. This, however, mercifully is over.
Thank you.
Extra time has come to an end.
Day off tomorrow? Oh, no, we're available daily now.
No more days off. 7 days a week, ESPN FC, and of course, you can find us exclusively on ESPN+. So give us the reasons why the FA Cup matters this year. What's the biggest storyline for you between Chelsea and Manchester United?
I'm not going to roll out all the historical tripe about the greatest cup competition in the world and so on, because normally that's what we used to make fun of the English, and I'm probably the most English person here, except for Paolo down the line. But no, look, I think very simply, this is important because we know who the best team in England is. It's Manchester City this season. But I think United, who, in addition to finishing second, they can make a strong statement by beating a very strong team that fell away at the end, but certainly wouldn't have looked out of place in the top four, and who are the defending champions in Chelsea. I think it would give Mourinho more leverage as well going into the summer vis-a-vis how United are going to strengthen. For Conte, it's a bit different. I don't think this is going to have any bearing whatsoever in terms of whether he returns as Chelsea manager next year. Incidentally, I also don't think that it's 100% given that he'll definitely not be back next year. That's a whole other issue. But, if you can leave here with, I won the title 1 year, I won the FA Cup the next year, and I did it in difficult circumstances, that's pretty good.
Let's go to Paolo here really quick. Paolo, you just heard from Gab. He says it's not a given that Antonio Conte will leave Chelsea. You agree?
Actually, I think he is probably on the way out. I first of all want to just pick up Gab and agree with him about the greatest cup competition in the world. My English side agrees with him, and this year my Italian side does as well. I know there's some other competition going on this summer that some other people seem to be making a big deal about, but that's not important. That's not a big deal. Look, I think that what Gab said was spot on. I think that it isn't a bad run at all to be in England for 2 years and come away with a Premier League title and win the FA Cup. And I do think that we tend to take this attitude nowadays, and it's certainly perpetuated by the media over here in the UK, that the FA Cup is almost an afterthought, that it's sort of something that doesn't matter because in this age of Twitter and everything, we're all so focused on the Premier League, so focused on the Champions League, so focused on the biggest things and only the biggest things. But just sort of speaking as a fan, speaking as someone who has been to these games as a fan, I promise you that the Chelsea fans and Manchester United fans who go to Wembley this weekend are going to be feeling a whole heap better about their season in the next months ahead if they win this tournament. It does matter to them. It does matter to football fans.
Casey, you're the only one on the show that's played in the FA Cup. You agree?
Well, I agree that it's a huge competition, but it's one that's been diluted over the years for a multiple of reasons. I think some foreign managers coming into the UK, the size of the squads, they don't have the same maybe history of what the competition means. They've played B teams in earlier rounds, which they get knocked out, and then they just don't have maybe the same focus that they have with the league. But it is a competition that when you can get to a final, what it means for your club, what it means to the fans, what it means to go there and win the competition. Yeah, maybe it's been diluted because maybe semifinals are at Wembley. It's not just the final. It's not just we've got to Wembley, this is the day out, this is what we've all been going for. But don't tell the fans when they get there. Don't tell the players, don't tell the coaches, don't tell Mourinho and Antonio Conte, if they win that title, that they're not going to hold their hand up and say, I won the FA Cup this season.
Can I just say that, alluding to what Paulo mentioned there, the idea that in the UK, the media thinks of this, of competition, essentially as a second fiddle, as an afterthought. Well, and that's in the UK. Imagine outside the UK. Imagine somebody who didn't grow up with the magic of the FA Cup. Somebody who didn't grow up with the history and the romance of the FA Cup. How is this significant to me? How is this significant, or more so significant, than a Copa del Rey final? The UK people don't care about the Copa del Rey final. And so now we're supposed to consider the FA Cup as to some sort of end-all, be-all. This only becomes important to these managers if they win it. If they win it, because you can spin this. If you're Mourinho, you spin this. You say, well, look, there's improvement here. We finished second, and here's an FA Cup title. This is us taking a step forward. If you're Antonio Conte, we had a difficult season. Yes, we have all sorts of issues, but here, when he counted, we won a game that matters. And so here's a league title, and here's an FA Cup title. What else do you want from me? You spin it, only if you win it. But and that's when it becomes significant.
I think it can also hurt you in reverse if you're not careful, especially with that gentleman, Antonio Conte, because right now he's still strong in the narrative. When I say he may not be leaving, it's because obviously of the compensation that needs to be paid to Chelsea. If there's a big club that really wants him and they're happy to go and pay the $8 million or $9 million or whatever it is to get him out of his Chelsea deal, then that's fine, then he'll go. But he's got this narrative now, and he says, like, look, we won the title. I didn't get the players I wanted. I didn't get all the support I wanted, and whether we believe him or not. But look what happened in big games against Barcelona. We came really, really close. We were unlucky. We had the better than the first time round. We beat Atleti, and against Manchester United in the final, my players pulled together and so on. If it doesn't happen, then you're stuck with a slightly different narrative, which says, wait a minute, you went out round of 16, you finished 5th, you stunk it up at the end of the season because nobody believed in you, and in the final, you lose to Manchester United. So maybe your rep as being sort of the ultimate one-game manager isn't quite so strong.
Well, and what's the worst thing that could happen? Okay, they get blown out and he gets fired. Let me tell you, a month ago, Antonio Conte had a sign up on the sidelines, fire me. Because that's the way his team was playing, and the disconnection between this manager and these players has been very clear over the last couple of months.
Inter Milan, 3 points back of Lazio for the last Champions League spot. The two teams will meet Sunday at Lazio. Of course, Inter Milan will need to win to get into 4th and punch their ticket into the Champions League next season. Paolo, no Champions League for Inter Milan since 2012. Just how much pressure are Inter under to get this result?
Well, they are under huge pressure for exactly the reason you just mentioned, that it's been already 6 years since they last played in this competition. Obviously, the Suning ownership group have poured a great deal of money into the club and expect to be back in the Champions League. But to a certain extent, I feel like the pressure has almost flipped on them at this point, because they've already blown it twice. They blew it by losing from 2-1 up in the final 5 minutes against Juventus. Lazio opened the door for them again. And they blew it again last weekend, losing at home to Sassuolo. And again, Lazio couldn't seal the deal. They couldn't finish the job by beating Crotone after that. So it feels like Inter have had their slip-ups and they've had these chances get away from them. And now it almost feels like the fact that there even is an opportunity on the last day, I don't know, to me it feels a bit less pressured. It almost feels like here's a chance at liberation almost after all that.
Gabby, talk about ramifications down the road. How much does Inter stand to lose if they don't win?
Well, Inter obviously in a position to exit the financial fair play settlement, and obviously having that Champions League money coming in means that they could actually really strengthen it. I think there's broader issues too, you know, because a year ago they said, all right, we're going to hang on to all our best players. We're going to get a much better coach. We're going to bring in Luciano Spalletti, and we'll make top four. And yet a year later, they're kind of further forward. You know, if they beat Lazio, the only reason they're going to get in is because of a better head-to-head. They'll probably end up having a worse goal difference as well. So it's a pretty remarkable situation. I think there's questions to be asked, and for me at least, you know, top four, that was the minimum result this season. And the fact that they even have another chance at it, they should really thank their lucky stars and just do not screw it up at this point.
All Lazio have to do is get a draw. They're into Champions League, and the SPI shows if you add up the win and the draw, 70% for Lazio to get that final spot in Champions League. Inter Milan.
Did you say 70 or
30%?
Okay.
Isn't it 70?
Yeah, I was making sure that you did your math correctly. By the way, we got financial fair play to this show.
I know. I thought you were going to start booing him when he said it.
That's a contract prerequisite by Gab.
So who gets it?
Well, one of the really interesting sidelines to all this is a situation with Stefan de Vrij, who, of course, the Dutch defender, one of the best defenders in Serie A. He's out of contract. He signed a deal. This is the kind of stuff I thought, you know, normally happens in Germany and it's all fine because, yeah, it's Bayern. But he signed a deal to go to Inter next season. And we don't know yet if he's going to start. You know, does he do his own interests? Does he do his club interests and hurt his future club, who then might have trouble affording him? We saw last weekend, obviously, he saved a goal on the goal line he made a goal line clearance for Lazio. So nobody's doubting his professionalism, but it's a tricky situation for Inzaghi to be in, because if you play him and he makes a mistake, you know, all of a sudden people are going to start to murmur and whatever else.
Well, it was a big reason why for years before pre-contracts came in, that if you were signing for another team in your own league, you couldn't sign till after the season was over, to avoid exactly this kind of conflict of interest.
I don't mean to do your job.
I was going to say, did you actually...
So who's going to win?
Who's going to win? You didn't actually give a prediction.
I think Inter are going to do it.
All right.
Really?
Because I think in the end, Inzaghi's going to bottle playing De Vrij, and he's not going to play him. And even though he says, oh, yeah, but we have Luis Felipe, whatever, we're fine without him. Yeah, okay, whatever. De Vrij is a different category.
Paolo, who do you see getting the result necessary this weekend?
Yeah, I mean, I sort of agree about De Vrij. I think it's a nightmare situation for Inzaghi. It's a nightmare situation for De Vrij because, exactly as Gab said, if he plays and tries his best but makes a mistake, everyone's going to crucify him. What hasn't been mentioned there is that Lazio are already short of guys. They're already missing Luis Alberto through injury. They're already missing Marco Parolo in midfield through injury. Ciro Immobile has just come back from injury, but is he really fit, or is this one of those situations where you're rushing him back because he's your top scorer and it's the game you have to win? Lazio are kind of a little bit in pieces at the moment, at the most critical point of the season. I think I'm leaning Inter as well, but look, Inter are always pazza Inter. They're always crazy Inter, and last week against Sassuolo, they had all the chances and didn't take them. So, as ever, a lot's going to come down to, in particular, Mauro Icardi, because he scores like 44% of the team's goals. So if he doesn't score, then it won't happen for him. Ale,
you agree with the guys here? Lazio won't even be able to get the draw?
I'm going to go with Lazio. Simply because I know that hurts Gab. You know? So that's it. That's it.
We're so petty on this show. It really is remarkable.
No, I'm just look. They've had multiple chances to close this up. I think they'll be able to do it one final time.
I think you got to go with a team that win or draw, they're through. I don't know. I mean, it's tough for Inter. I think Lazio can scramble a draw.
A developing story over the last couple months is Robert Lewandowski in the tense relationship with Bayern Munich. You know, he's been kind of outspoken about what the club is doing, and some club legends are hitting back. First, Sepp Maier had this today. Nobody saw him, speaking of Lewandowski against Real Madrid. Where was he in the 2 games? Oliver Kahn adds this: I don't see Lewandowski enough in these games. He doesn't justify the status that he desires in such games. There's more criticism. Paul Breitner: it is said that Bayern need Lewandowski in order to win the Champions League, so we have to state that we were twice clearly better than Real Madrid and twice played sensationally without Lewandowski. Of course, there's always a response from Lewandowski's agent here. It is weird and unfair that so-called experts pin the blame for the exit against Real Madrid on just one player. In the past 3 seasons, he's been playing with a handicap in the Champions League. I get the agent's spot here, but to call a Bayern Munich roster a handicap?
Yeah, this is out of control, because the truth of the matter is the criticism coming Robert Lewandowski's way is fair in the sense that there's an expectation, not only for him, but for Bayern Munich to do better. But if you're Lewandowski, you have to score the big goals in those big moments. That's why you are the guy who's intended to be that player, that person, that player, the main guy who scores the goals. Did he score the goals for Bayern Munich against Real Madrid? No. Did he have good performances? No. So the criticism is fair. You want to be at that level, you're going to be criticized at that level.
And it's in a context where, as we heard from Paul Breitner there, Bayern Munich largely outplayed Real Madrid over the 2 legs, in his opinion, in both years, and that only makes things worse.
Welcome to the ESPN FC studios as we continue our World Cup previews. Casey Keller, Alejandro Moreno, Sebastian Salazar, Paolo Bandini with us as well. Today's focus, Poland, as we take a look at the recent major tournament results. This will be the first World Cup for Poland since 2006. But of course, they did make a nice run to the quarterfinals at the last European Championships. Always matters who you draw in the group. Poland in Group H. Colombia 70% on the SPI to advance. Poland 50%, but Japan right there at 49%. So no guarantees, according to the SPI, that Poland will go through. Paolo, let's start with you here. How do you see the chances for Poland to advance out of Group H?
I think they've certainly got a solid chance of getting out of that group, but I'm not sure about them as a team. First of all, in qualifying, even though they won their group, they conceded 14 goals, which is the most of any of the European group winners. I also just feel like of any one team, I know there's sort of a tendency to focus in on big stars, but this is a team that really is reliant on one individual. Robert Lewandowski scored 16 goals for them in qualifying. Nobody else on the team got more than 3. In fact, I think only one person got 3 and everyone else got maybe 1. So they really are a team that goes as far as he goes. Now look, pretty good player to have, being the one you're leaning on, but for instance, what we saw in the Champions League this season when he couldn't get it done for Bayern Munich against Real Madrid, I think you've got to multiply that by several factors, because the team around him, there's some good players in it. I like Kamil Glik in defence. Obviously, they've been missing Arkadiusz Milik a lot recently. He's now back from his cruciate ligament injury, so maybe he can add something up front. But I just think are very, very reliant on one player as a team.
Ale, do Poland get out of the group?
Barely. They do. He just mentioned the name that I think is going to be critical to the success of Poland. Paolo was talking about not necessarily Lewandowski, but what's around him. And the name of Milik has to be the guy that provides you with a different level of quality. In terms of what they do in the final third, all the attention is going to be on Lewandowski. That means that there's going to be chances that are going to fall to somebody else. If that somebody else is Milik, he has to take care of those opportunities. He did not do so with any consistency in the Euros. He has to be the guy that is able to pick up those rebounds, that is able to get on those open spaces, that is going to leave Lewandowski with 2 and 3 defenders. He's going to be able to then get those opportunities. If he takes advantage of those opportunities, then Poland advances.
Could Poland, beyond just advancing, make any type of run?
I don't think so. I just don't think they're strong enough as a squad. I think the defensive question will come up as they play better opposition. Too reliable on one, on one player in Lewandowski, and being able to shut him down. And obviously, the better teams will be able to do that with less number of players. And so it is. I think they'll get out of their group. I think they are better than Japan. Majority of their players, their top players, probably playing in a league like the Bundesliga. So I think they're good enough in that draw. but not to go much further.
But they better pay attention to Senegal, and they better pay attention to Japan, and the Colombia game, of course.
Will. I don't think they can.
It's just, I don't think that Poland is good enough to overlook other teams and say, you know what, we're just going to show up and win. I think they have their own limitations and their own challenges. If they overlook Senegal because they're thinking about Colombia, that might be the reason why they don't make it out.
Well, I
of the
think
group.
that's the key, right? That first game, you get a good result against Senegal, then they set themselves up. But I think if they slip up, have a poor game, Senegal beats them, trouble.
Paulo, we haven't asked you yet. You think Poland gets out of the group?
Yeah, I think so, but yeah, I don't think it's at all straightforward. I personally see Colombia as the strongest team in that group, and Senegal have got some options up front. Obviously, Sadio Mane, if he does what he can do, you bring Mbaye Niang into that attack as well. There's a lot of pace there, so I don't know. It's a tough group. I see them as the second favorite in it personally, but it's not a guarantee at all.
So I guess we sum it up as cautious optimism from the desk here as far as Poland's chances go in Russia.
Well, don't make plan for the third week, is what I'm saying.
No?
No. just saying.
Colombia, Japan, Senegal, and Poland. That's your pool in Group H. There are still somehow explosive comments coming out about the U.S. not making the World Cup.
No.
A recent from our good
You
friend,
mean with the
former
World
colleague,
Cup ramping up?
Doug McIntyre, now with Yahoo Sports. He spoke to Alejandro Bedoya. He spoke to a lot of people, but here's what the Philadelphia Union player had to say. It doesn't really have to do with the coaching. Bruce gave us a game plan in that last game, and we didn't execute. We had guys not getting stuck in. We were counting on an 18-year-old to carry the load for us. Other guys, the veteran guys, let us down, I think. Until that last qualifier, the lineup was changed from the first game to the second game. Maybe that was a bad coaching move, but I think maybe some players also weren't being honest and saying they were 100% when maybe they were a little bit sore. There was a lot put into that game against Panama. So we don't blame the coaches. We blame the starting 11, but we also say it might have been a bad coaching move. Casey, what should we make of Bedoya's quotes?
Well, I mean, I probably went maybe 2 games a season where I wasn't sore in somewhere. If you're trying to blame that a guy is going to call himself out of a clutch World Cup qualifier because he's a little sore, then I don't want you in my squad to begin with, because you got to know how to fight to go down. Look, was there a game plan? Sure. Could you not get a point against the Trinidad B team? Yes, it's a disaster all the way around. There's a lot of blame across the board. Players obviously have to shoulder a large load of that blame. Coaches have to take some, federation as well. There's a lot of blame to go around, put it that way.
Mark, what do you make of it?
Well, I don't think it's a surprise that Alejandro Bedoya was more of a prominent player under Jurgen Klinsmann. He's a player who wanted to get into that game. I'm not saying this is sour grapes by any means, but what Casey said, if you're playing and you can't play through soreness, that's not an issue. Coaching is an issue. Player performance is an issue. Game plan is an issue. Listen, Jurgen Klinsmann lost 2 games, and arguably the 2 of the hardest games in this hexagonal for the U.S. men's national team. But the most important game, sans that Trinidad and Tobago game, was Costa Rica at home. And that's where you lost it. That's where Bruce Arena lost it. Now, I agree with you. Take some blame. At no point in any of this have we heard Jurgen Klinsmann, have we heard Bruce Arena, have we heard the players just say, we weren't good enough. We messed it up. We didn't do things the right way. All we keep hearing is, well, maybe the players weren't honest with themselves. They were maybe too sore. Oh, well, maybe this was a bad coaching job. Or maybe there were some bad apples. Why not just say, I messed up. I, Bruce Arena, messed up. I, Jurgen Klinsmann, messed up. I, player, ex-player, messed up. Because that's what all people want to hear now. That's everything. That's all the fans want is accountability.
That's the only thing you want to hear. The last thing you want to hear is Bruce Arena pushing a book. Huh? I don't want to hear any part of that.
Are you not buying the book?
No. Well, no. Are you kidding me? And who wants to read that book? I already know the ending of that book. The ending of that book is the U.S. not making it to the World Cup. So I don't want any part of that, and I don't want to hear from him. I don't want to hear from Jurgen Klinsmann. But I know you're going to tell me about Jurgen Klinsmann, aren't you?
I'm going to save the Klinsmann quote for last, because it really is, I think, of all of these, the most shocking. Another quote from Bedoya, because they're always being compared. Klinsmann Arena, whose fault was it more? Here's from Bedoya. Jurgen was always challenging you. He pushed and tested you, and maybe some people can't handle that as well as others. I think that was the problem. Casey, I want to come to you on this.
Sure.
Dave Sarakin comes out and says, we need an American coach because an American coach understands the culture of the American player. To me, it's the culture of the American player that failed us in this World Cup qualifying campaign. What are we saying here? Is there some truth here to what Bedoya is saying about Klinsmann pushing guys too hard? And is that more an indictment on Klinsmann or the guys?
Well, I think there was some quotes from Klinsmann also saying, that maybe the coach that comes in, if it is a foreign coach, has to understand a little bit more that you're not going to be able to change the minds and the mindset of maybe players that have grown up here. I think Jurgen came in wholeheartedly saying, we're going to change all this. We're going to make this more of a European culture, a South American culture. And look, that's brilliant. There's no question that that would be the best thing for U.S. soccer, but you can't change something that's so ingrained. You have to work with what you have. But what I would love to see somebody say from U.S. soccer is not that we're going to hire an American coach or a foreign coach. We're going to hire the best coach available that we can bring in to give us the best chance to turn this bad scenario around and move us forward in the world. And I think it's a little narrow to say we're going to hire an American, we're going to hire a foreigner. No, let's find who's the best available.
Is there a problem with attitude amongst American players? Because that's what I pick up from that Bedoya quote.
Attitude? Well, I guess it goes by the individual said player, but there definitely is a cultural issue here. You go elsewhere around the world, you fight for your place. The next guy behind you, he wants that because that's food on the table for his family. There is no comfort involved. There is a sense of comfort within the culture of U.S. soccer. Now, if you want to test yourself, Jurgen said it. You need to go abroad. It's not because MLS isn't any good or he feels you can't be a good player, because if you're brushing shoulders and you're sharpening steel with players who are like-minded and who are better, you're going to be a better player. It's that simple. So it's a cultural issue.
I got to say, I'm not an American player, right? But this conversation and these quotes are an indictment on the American players. They're essentially saying, look, Jurgen thought that we were soft. And if I'm in that locker room, which I wasn't, right? But if I'm in that locker room, I'm thinking, wait a minute, I think that guy's soft, and I think that guy's soft, and I think that guy's soft. You're in a position where you can do something about it within that locker room. So I appreciate Alejandro Bedoya's honesty. It's a little too late now. You see? You could have done something then. You could have spoken up then. Bring it up then and say, look, guys, we're not ready to play this game. The mentality is not correct. Bring it up at that point and then get the result that you need to get against Trinidad and Tobago, and now we would be having a conversation as to what the U.S. 23 roster would be going into the World Cup, rather than rehashing what keeps coming all again and again and again, that the U.S. players are not tough enough in tough environments.
There was several kind of international players that I'd run into who would say to me, kind of looking at kind of this last campaign, and say, when we played America, we knew we were in for a tough game. We knew that they weren't necessarily as good as we were or whatever, but they were going to fight and scrap and claw, and they were going to be physical, and they were going to run, and they were going to just make things difficult for us. And they're going, what happened? And I think that's...
People got comfortable.
Wow.
Listen, I was in that locker room with Jurgen Klinsmann, and I recall at no time feeling, and I mean, this is not an indictment to Jurgen, this is not saying Bruce versus Jurgen, but at no time did I feel that I could let off the gas pedal, because Jurgen proved it, that he'd go out anywhere in the world if this player had an American passport, and he'd bring him in. So that's your job on the line. So at any given time, it's your opportunity, but it's also your opportunity to get out of that locker room and leave. That was evident.
Ale, you mentioned it. You guys ready for the bombshell?
Oh, here we go.
Klinsmann says this U.S. team could have made the semifinals of the World Cup. What?
At some point, whether it's Bruce Arena or Jurgen Klinsmann, both, somebody in their lives has to tell them, buddy, just enough. Be quiet. Go away for a second, okay? Nobody wants to hear this. Your team, this same team that he's talking about, they could have made the semifinals of the World Cup, got destroyed by Costa Rica for nothing. Destroyed by Costa Rica. Did not get the results that they needed to get in order to make it to the World Cup. And now you mean to tell me that I'm supposed to sit here and believe, I hold an American passport, by the way. I'm Venezuelan, but I hold an American passport. Let's say, for a second, that I'm going to put that Uncle Sam hat on. And I'm all about the land of the free and home of the brave.
I love
Here we
this
go.
visual.
U.S., here we go. You're telling me as a U.S. fan that now I'm supposed to believe we didn't make the tournament, but if we had made the tournament, we'd be going to the semifinals. Come
Okay,
on, man.
you know what?
We are not idiots.
I'll
Come on,
I'll
man.
play along. I'll play along. Let's say they go in and they make it in that playoff game, okay? They are now with France, Peru, and Denmark. They're not getting out of that group. Are you kidding me?
Well, but you've heard that before, though, with this U.S. team. They weren't getting out of South Africa. They weren't getting out of Korea. They weren't getting out of Brazil.
They didn't get in.
And they got out.
They didn't get in.
Well, I know that.
Because
But
you worked in a Klinsmann camp. Where was he seeing this talent? Where is this semifinal run? Explain that.
no, I'm going to agree. I think Jurgen's stretching this a little bit.
A long bit.
Look, I don't see this team, this squad, making it to a semifinal. I think what he's seeing is there should be enough talent coming out of America at some stage to get themselves from a great run in 2002 to get to a quarterfinal. That can we get to that point where we're pushing? But there has to be some changes to get there.
Hey, so I gotta admit, this is a head scratcher for me because
You think?
2014, it was there's no chance we're winning the World Cup. Get that out of your minds. Now it's like we could have made a semifinal run. So it's just very extreme one way and very extreme the other.
Well, let's go back to 2014. You get out of a tough group. You get beat up pretty good by Belgium, but you have a chance.
Correct.
You give yourself a chance to get yourself out of that game. And then you find yourself in a quarterfinal. Costa Rica finds themselves in a quarterfinal.
Hey,
You're right. I'm just saying.
you're drinking that Klinsmann juice now.
No. I'm not drinking any juice. All I'm saying is that you're that close.
Yeah, you're that close.
Now go back to Korea. Go back to Korea. There's a handball on the line where Germany should have had a guy sent off and a penalty for the U.S. The U.S. were that close to getting to a semifinal.
Okay. But that 2002 team that you're talking about is a much different team than what we're talking about here. Much different team. Much different character, too.
Well,
not only talent. I'm talking about character.
Characters is key.
Yeah, okay. You know who was in that locker room for your team in 2002. And you know who was in this locker room for this team that did not make it. So I don't want any part of that juice, and I don't want that Kool-Aid.
Second leg, Sunday in Toluca. Toluca now 33% to win. Nemesio, this is a really hard place to go and get a result. Should that number be so high in favor of Santos?
It's a very good Santos team. A team has got a lot of offensive power. So does Toluca, but Toluca doesn't have that 12 o'clock kickoff time. That's really what does them a lot of favors when they play at home. This is Santos to lose, but this Toluca team has the offensive firepower to make it interesting for sure.
You do realize that the way he asked you the question is that he wanted you to tell him, no, the difference should be less than that.
Yes.
Are you kidding me? All right. It should be closer. And Toluca has enough good players in this team that they can turn this around. But they have to defend better. And Talavera cannot make this sort of mistakes. And they're not going to win the game in the first minute. So be patient with the way you approach this. Don't allow yourself to get stretched. Don't allow the counterattack from Giannini. Toluca, I think, is a better team. I think Toluca over the 90 minutes may just do it.
Finish better. If it's the first 6 minutes of this game, it could have been 2-0 Toluca.
Okay, now, does the away goal count, or is it like the standings
not
and all that kind of
They have to win.
Oh, so you have to win. So if they win 1-0, it goes to penalties.
Overtime.
Overtime penalties. Okay. That's maybe why the SBI is a little bit skewed.
Correct. Listen, they're a great home team, but that 12 o'clock kickoff hour is now an afternoon. It's going to be in the favor of this.
You know, he picked Toluca, right?
He did.
He did. Yeah,
It sounds like
he picked Toluca.
I picked Toluca. That is.
Give the people what they want, Ali.
That's weak sauce right there.
I'm speaking the truth.
No, I don't think
Of course
so.
I'm speaking the truth.
Recognize
Just give me a stick, you idiots.
We would. There he is. There he is. And we got him.
Anybody that comes out of the South American qualifying, I think, is always going to be a tough nut to crack.
You disrespected the South American team. It's no surprise.
How did I?
Well, I mean, you're all picking Denmark.
No, I didn't. You're not listening again. What did I just say?
You've been on vacation.
I tell you what, you have got the dirtiest ears I've ever heard.
From Stevie Nicol! We've seen it! We've seen it from Stevie Nicol! What? Wait.
That's Stevie, isn't it?
I gotta give
Stevie's got some rhythm, man. I give it to him. Stevie, you got a vacation coming up?
I do, yeah.
Where are you going? Anywhere interesting?
What's he got to do with you? I think I was getting interrogated about where I was and what I was doing.
Because you're a very private person.
I'm a very private person.
Yeah,
I don't like to say.
Play the video of him dancing, show how private.
Hey, he's going on vacation as well.
Yeah, you never asked me. Get stuffed.
Oh, come on.
He wasn't. Hang on, just hold your horses. Hey, what Klopp's done with him in that central midfield is remarkable.
You need that magical creativity that...
That's going to come from Jack Wilshere?
Oh, come on, mate.
It looks wiggy.
He's wearing a helmet.
Yeah, pull it off.
I don't know where Paolo
Sorry,
got
guys.
windswept here.
You notice how Burley didn't go after the hair.
Hey, hold on a minute.
Oh, we don't like it when the tables are turned, do we?
If he does that with that group, then he needs knighting. The Queen needs to knight that guy because.
Well, I'm not sure if the Queen can knight someone in Argentina.
But everybody would know who you are by now. You're super famous. And married.
And married.
Just now.
It does change things a lot.
Let's just stop. I heard it earlier. I love you.
Are you?
Who was doing that?
I love you. I love you.
I'm married like a week ago, man. I can't still say it. I literally did this. I was like, yeah, no, sounds good. I can't wait to see you. Love you too.
It serves you right.
Julian, yes or no, Griezmann in your top 3 in the world?
The French in me has to say yes. Of course I have to say yes.
Look at the camera and say that.
I love you, baby.
I love it.
I'll say it loud now that Craig's not here.
He is very popular with the young kids because of the Fortnite celebration.
Buy us.
That's good value.
This is really where I come for my best marital advice. You guys have been sensational.
Love you. I love you. No, you put the phone down. No, you.
When does your freaking vacation start?
Put the phone down.
No, I love you more.
Here,
I love you more.
I love you
No,
more.
I love you more. No, I love you more. Oh, for God's sake, man. Sort yourself out.
I'll tell you what. There is
Some
nothing
abuse there, my friend.
There's nothing creepier than Craig Burley saying I love you. What? Can you imagine being on the other side of that phone call? I love you, babe. No, I don't want any part of that.
I think the nicest thing Craig said to me all week was get stuffed.
Oh, there you go.
There you go.
And Stevie said, what's it do to you when you were interrogating him about his holiday plans?
Yeah.
Yeah, what was Stevie Nichols so paranoid about?
I don't
What
know.
was going on there?
What were you so nosy about, more to the point?
Yeah.
Man, I can't do anything right.